course, Color 10 News is your local election headquarters, and as you know, we did it today, and every year Americans head to the polls to choose our leaders, to be our voices. We decided as well to take a look at some of the most divisive issues around the country, issues that have gridlocked our government and polarized our society.
But how did we arrive at this paralyzing gridlock? Color 10's Brett Martin looked into the history of our political parties and how gridlock impacts our ability to move forward. Brett?
David and Jennifer, red or blue, that's a decision Americans make every year. But it wasn't always like that. Since 1776, conflict has played a role in our country's politics. However, the founding of our country never mentions political parties, so getting to where we are now is far from simple.
When our founders wrote our Constitution, there was no mention of political parties. The first line says, "We the people of the United States," not "we the people of the Republican or Democratic Party."
Hardliners are saying.
Dr. Daniel Ponder is a political scientist.
The Constitution is actually a partyless document.
Ponder says current political parties resulted from dramatic changes almost 50 years ago.
The roots of where we're at now really go back to the mid-1960s. The Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965, and after that you get African Americans coming into the Democratic Party. You get white conservatives moving away from the Democratic Party.
According to Ponder, 87% of African Americans now have Democratic views, and 55% of women lean blue as well.
And where polarization comes from is this rise in the different electoral bases of the parties.
While the demographics of our country are constantly changing, new technology like smartphones and internet putting news at our fingertips has its own impacts.
As people are constantly being bombarded because of the media with information about these types of issues, they tend to take one stand or the other.
Professor of sociology Dr. Lorene Stone says the mindset of people drives the polarization of America.
Instead of focusing on what we have, what unifies us as a society, I think we've become so judgmental and so opinionated on various issues.
College professors like Stone believe that they teach both sides of the issue and then let the students make their own decision.
I don't think it's necessary for people to get caught up in just because they're Republican, they need to stick to their Republican ideas. I think it's okay for them to be a little bit more liberal on a social issue.
On issues like gun control and immigration.
I think it's appropriate for people to be allowed to arm themselves.
I think we should have heavier gun control laws.
There's got to be a point where you try to help people who are struggling out. I mean, there's got to be some line. You can't just block them all out.
Ponder says conflicts within the Republican Party is causing spin-off parties and increasing the divide.
The Tea Party has risen over the last few years as a result of the increasing conservatism and activism of the Republicans' electoral base. They have had, in a sense, a real effect on how politics plays out in Washington and around the country.
The lack of competition between political parties in each of the 50 states during elections provides just more examples of regional and geographic polarization, and the result of that is many of these states are easily tagged as red or blue states.
You had a lot of states that were really close with their final popular vote. And over time, particularly coming over in the 2008-2012 election cycles, and even back a little further than that, you see many, many more states that are much more likely to be blowouts.
I think this whole notion of we live in red states or blue states tends to contribute to that kind of mentality.
Ponder says a solution won't happen in the near future.
I think we're going to see polarization for as long as the eye can see, but I think part of it's going to be, not all of it, part of it's going to be, of course, what kind of a Republican Party emerges, and then what kind of a Democratic response it gets.
But Stone says the change isn't limited to the political world.
We live in a society that guarantees freedom, and that's what we all value as Americans. Well, freedom means differing opinions and differing attitudes, and we have to just be accepting of that.
The key to decreasing the polarization is understanding the source of the rhetoric that rises to the top of the daily news feed.
The loudest voices tend to be the most polarized voices.
And we've put the poll on our website, ozarksfirst.com. You can find it at the top of the page. Take that poll, let us know how it is, and see how you fit when it comes to big or small government.